With regard to the latest. Mzwai, thank you very much indeed for coming through. All right, so we've heard this back and forth with regards to Mr. Zuma's legal counsel as well as the legal team of the commission. What's the latest?
Well, Blaine, we are on a break now, a tea break, which normally takes place at around 11:15, but it took place at around 11:20, and that break will be extended until 12 o'clock. It's usually a 15-minute break. The reason for its extension, Blaine, is because after that 15 minutes, the legal counsel of former President Jacob Zuma and the legal team of the commission, and of course the judge, will meet in the chambers to discuss really the proceedings. Up until now, there hasn't been any serious progress because the team representing the former president in the form of Thabani Masuku have basically said they are not happy with the manner in which Advocate Pretorius is leading this evidence. In their view, they say somehow you get a sense, Blaine, that they feel they've been duped to come into the commission because they are saying instead of being led with questions that are clarity-seeking, the questions are essentially cross-examination. So they say if that was the intention from the word go, he should have been consulted, and then so that like any other witness, he could have prepared a proper statement, and then those allegations that are put to him are properly ventilated. Of course, the team is basically saying that is not the case, but what they do want to do is to make sure that issues really that have been said here at this commission that does include the name of the former president are dealt with thoroughly. Of course, there's no agreement at this stage around the two parties. That is the reason why this break we are on will be extended until 12 o'clock so that the teams, including the judge, will then be able to work out what exactly should happen. Because at this stage, Blaine, it seems it will be very difficult to continue. And remember, this week has been set aside for the former president. We know that other issues that he will be quizzed on relate to former member of of Parliament Fikimento, former Minister Barbara Hogan, former Minister again Rama Tlodi, just to name a few. So if this issue around witness one is not resolved now, you can only imagine what it will do to the remaining ones.
Mzwai, it seems that former President Zuma's legal team is really watching the other side for any deviations from the letter of the invitation. But one would argue that in a situation like this one, both sides will have different tactics that they use to approach the process.
Desiree, I think this is the issue. There's a sense and a feeling from the team that essentially this commission is about the former president. Given that that's what they are sensing, they feel he should have been informed timeously and been made to prepare accordingly. So that is why any issue which they think may have implications, perhaps that are negative for him, so they must stand up and raise it. I mean, as much as the head of the commission, the legal commission, that is Advocate Paul Pretorius, is basically saying, no, we are only seeking clarity. So they are simply not convinced. I think the reason why perhaps they are not convinced, Desiree, I would assume, is because they are saying the kind of interest that is in this commission, not only from just ordinary people or the public, but even law enforcement agencies are watching with keen interest. You know, the NPA heard what she has said. Basically, there is a team that is watching proceedings. In the event there are people who are being said in so far as being implicated in criminal activities, so the law enforcement agencies can be able to pick up this information and follow up.
Yeah.
And I think they simply would not want to take a chance where their client could perhaps implicate himself or may not be able to answer the questions that may have been put to him. Of course, they also raise the issues of credibility, and that is used so much when the trial goes on, so to establish if someone is truthful or not. Desiree.
Yeah, you know, Mzwai, to your earlier point, the former president did say yesterday that according to those who are implementing things, this commission must be the grave of Zuma. The Deputy Chief Justice yesterday did say that he is appearing, Mr. Zuma that is, without being compelled to do so. What is the chances of the legal team telling Mr. Zuma, you know what, this is not what we signed up for, let's pack our bags and we're leaving? Are there any rules that compel him to stay for the whole week?
Under the current invitation, Blaine and Desiree, there is nothing that is compelling the former president to be here under the current invitation. Remember, this was more like a courteous invitation. But of course, the commission does have powers to subpoena witnesses. So let's assume for a second that the legal team decides to pack and go. But the commission still insists that there are issues they still want to pursue with the former president. They will then invoke those rules basically, which will now subpoena the former president. So if that's the case, so then you can't simply just do as you please. You will have to abide by the rules. So I think the common ground really that both parties will be looking for, they will go into the chambers and agree perhaps to say, as much as we want to cooperate, we don't think it's fair to pose these kinds of questions because their implications are A, B, C, or D. And also the commission will say, well, we understand that, but remember, when these acts were being committed, the acts of wrongdoing, the allegations and stuff like that, so in the main, here was someone who was presiding over the country, and he should know something or two about certain things, as you had the exchange earlier around the appointment or the dismissal of Themba Maseko. So those are the issues really that they would look into in order to be able to come to a conclusion or an amicable solution, Blaine and Desiree.
Zai, throughout the process, we're seeing only three faces: the Deputy Chief Justice, Mr. Zuma, and the side of the lawyers. Give us a sense of the room today, who is in attendance, who has interest in this case.
Well, in the room today, in fact, I've just seen when we were taking a break, I see that the Secretary General of the ANC, Isma Khashule, is attending. When the former president was exiting, so I think he met him at the door, so they exchanged pleasantries. And then I think from there, Mr. Mahashule greeted also the legal team of the former president. And of course, there are other people who were there yesterday. Today, it's not as full as it was yesterday, but there are those who are still backing the former president, so they've come. When he came in, walked in for the first time this morning, so they did like they did yesterday, so they clapped hands and of course did a bit of a standing ovation because they clapped hands for quite some time. So you still do have some of those who were there yesterday, but not all of them. I mean, yesterday the room was almost full, so it's not full today, but those who back him are here. Perhaps to both of you, Blaine and Desiree, we may also speak about the issue that we have not touched on. Before he resumed the cross-examination, or rather the stance that he was taking at the witness, as a witness, he raised an issue to the commission to basically say, this morning he was informed by his personal assistant from the ANC side to say she got a phone call from unknown persons saying they will kill the PA and kill Zuma and kill his family and those around him. And we also understand that sometime last week, the advocate Moses Kakane also received death threats. So, something which the judge really took a serious dim view to say, any person who comes to the commission must not be intimidated. As much as it has happened before, we remember with the issue of Fikimento, when the security issues arose, the commission stepped in immediately to provide some sort of security. But it's a bit difficult in this instance for the former president. Remember, by virtue of him being the former president, he still carries a lot of security detail. I mean, even if the commission were to want to assist, it will not be to the level of what he already has. Perhaps the issue would arise around his family and those around him. And this is what the former president, Blaine, also said. He said once he concludes at the end, I think at the end of today, he wants to go back and tell us about the circumstances of the death of his child. Remember, last year he lost a son, and then he said he now knows how that happened.
Yeah, sorry, Desiree, go ahead.
You know, I found the words of the Deputy Chief Justice interesting as he was going into break and calling all the parties to his chambers. And he was saying we need to find a way to resolve this. Just give us a sense of the mood in the room. Is there an appetite on Mr. Zuma's legal team's side to continue with the process? Or have they had it? What's your sense from being inside the room?
Yeah, you know, Desiree, if you look at what happened yesterday, one of the things that really was said by Advocate Moses Kakane was to say, Chairperson, referring to Judge Zondo, I'm handing over the witness to you, not knowing what he's going to say, what's going to happen. So, essentially saying they would have preferred to have had prior information as to what exactly the commission wanted from him. And you look at what they are doing today in the form of Thabani Masuku, the other advocate for the former president, basically saying, you know, this is not what we were expecting. We were expecting more of clarity-seeking questions, but we see more of cross-examination. I think my mood, the mood really, and my sense is that if the commission sticks to its guns to say they are not changing the line of questioning because that's what they want to do, you may have a bit of a stalemate, because these ones are saying we want a situation where our client will be more at ease. And these ones are saying, fine, but still there are issues that have been raised that must still be checked with the former president. So it is very crucial that that meeting is happening in the chambers, because it will somehow perhaps give a bit of a compromise. At this stage, it's not clear what that will be.
Yeah, you got a sense, especially yesterday, that more files, so to speak, will be opened because the former president said he's being provoked to the last degree, and he says, I never thought I'll be nasty, and I think I can be nasty. I think is that what he said. So you would assume that he has much more, potentially has much more to say.
Well, one of the things that he said yesterday was that I've been provoked, as you have said, and there are people who are hell-bent, in his view, on making sure that he is somehow silenced or his name is being tarnished. So he is basically saying the time to wait and just keep quiet whilst everyone is saying anything and everything that they want about him is now over. He is saying those who still continue to speak about his name in a negative way, he will fight back. He will simply say so much about them. I mean, he was saying he's got the list of the people that he can say so much about because he feels him being nice is not helping him in any way. As a result, so he will need to fight back. So my sense, plain, is that if, for example, as the commission continues, you have individuals who would perhaps come here and say certain things, particularly those he may have worked with, those who are his comrades, he probably would be able to say, oh, well, comrade so-and-so, actually I know him or her better, so he will definitely fight back. I think what he was doing yesterday, he was basically giving us a foretaste of things to come should he be pushed to the last degree, as he put it.
Well, Mzwayi, it's nearly 12 noon and I imagine proceedings are about to resume. So let's release you. Thank you so much for that update.
All right, we're going to take a quick break.